AITA for speaking my mind when my 23-years-old son announced he was moving in with a 43-years-old woman? This is a throwaway because my family knows my Reddit. Sorry about the length. I, 43F, and the parent of 3 boys, 23, 18, and 15. A bit of background about me. My parents were teenagers when they had me. Being a teenage parent seems to just run in my family. So when I had my oldest, I promised myself I would ensure my kids broke that cycle. We talked about sex and relationships so much that my kids would run the minute they saw me, just in case I brought it up, lol. I would stress condoms. As a matter of fact, I would just buy them and tell them to let me know if they run out, no questions asked. I would also stress things like fending for yourself and having your own. Especially do not give up your apartment for your girlfriend until you know she will be your wife. I've seen too many men fall for this and wind up homeless and moving back to their parents' home because the love didn't last. Fortunately, this level of openness allowed my kids to be open with me about it, too. So far, it's working, so fingers crossed. My oldest, who has autism and ADHD, moved into his first apartment, and I was genuinely proud to watch him navigate life as an adult, learning to pay bills, care for himself, and become independent and confident. Just for reference, my son was diagnosed with autism and ADHD as a child, so these milestones mean the world to me. He came over for dinner, and we began having a conversation about dating. He mentioned that if he sees a woman he likes, he will go for it, with no questions asked, no matter the age. Due to being a product of teenage parents and personal preference, I have a significant issue with these May/December romances. I believe they are unequal, and the younger person eventually gets taken advantage of, basically used and abused. And really, who wants to date their mom or dad? That is just icky. I was taken aback and explained these points to him very strongly. I told him at 23, I expect him to go wherever his dumb stick points him. Have experiences and learn from them, even with an older woman. But not that old. The power dynamic is on her side. He then told me he has been dating a woman he met at work. He began talking fast about how much I would like her, how she is just like me, strong, independent, intelligent. Her birthday is even 7 days after mine, so it would be like having a sister. He then told me that this individual is actually 7 days younger than me. She is my age and has a daughter who is 1 year older than my middle son. Then he put the cherry on top and said he was giving up his apartment and moving in with her. I will admit I flipped the fuck out. I told him the same things again and added, let's be honest. You are barely 5 years out of high school. What, possibly, could a woman 20 years older than you want other than your penis? There is no meeting of the minds. You haven't had enough life experience even to understand the same things someone 5 years older than you understands, let alone someone my age. This is the equivalent of a high school teacher dating their students. Yeah, it's great for her ego to say she has a young lover, but what are you going to do after you blow her back out? Discuss politics? How the Fed needs to lower interest rates to help the middle and lower classes. You are just figuring out how to pay bills with one hand and wipe your own bottom with the other. She is using you for her fantasy and stupidly got caught up in it. The only thing that is going to happen is that after you put her old bottom in traction, she will wake up and realize that she is raising another child and kick you to the curb. And what will you have to show for it? Nothing, because you gave up everything you worked hard to achieve to be with her. This conversation went on for a while. Suffice it to say, we did not see eye to eye. I insisted on meeting this woman, so we scheduled a meeting for a couple of days later. The night before, he called to say they needed to cancel because she was nervous about meeting us, so we rescheduled 3 more times with the same excuse. Finally, his move-in day approached, and I put my foot down. We finally arranged a meeting at a local restaurant. No, I was still not happy about it. My husband tried to talk me down during this period, and for the most part, I told myself I would be open, even if it were just for my son's sake. He kept explaining that if I openly opposed this relationship, my son would dig his heels in and stay with her, just to try to prove us wrong, and that, worse than that, I could lose him. I guess the nerves for this meeting got to me. I hadn't slept at all the night before and could barely talk. I had lost my voice. Since I was sleepy and, therefore, uber cranky, my husband and I got into a heated argument. I still don't remember what it was about, but I can tell you it was a nothing issue. We weren't even speaking to each other when we left to meet them. We arrived at the restaurant and met her for the first time in the foyer while waiting to be seated. My husband explained about my voice, and we sat down. My husband was chit-chatting with them, asking questions, and generally being the good guy he always was. I, on the other hand, was sitting there stewing. I kept telling myself not to say anything, that losing my voice was divine intervention. I could feel the nerves on her as well. We ordered coffee and tea, and I went to the restroom. When I returned, they were still discussing the relationship, how they met, their plans, etc. The question came up on why they thought it was a good idea to live together, and she began explaining how she was hesitant at first but realized what a wonderful man I had raised, so mature, so open, so giving and caring, that he won her over. She wants to give him everything and provide him with the world. He opened her eyes to what could be. I was retching on the inside. At that point, I asked about her marital status. She is divorced with a 19-year-old daughter. Well, where's the kid living? She is off at school and doesn't live at home, so she won't be an issue in the relationship. My son even interjected that the daughter asked him questions and told him she gave her blessing and not to hurt her mother. This woman kept talking, and admittedly, I didn't hear everything she said because of my own inner monologue when she mentioned something about having kids. I tuned in and said, "Yes, let's talk about kids. You know, my son has always wanted them." "Has he explained his autism diagnosis to you?" "No?" "That is a consideration because whoever he has children with will have to have the stamina and fortitude to deal with it if the children are diagnosed. Let's also discuss that you are dating a man who is not much older than your child. Is it that difficult to find a bed buddy your own age? And let's add to that the fact that you are not young. Let's be honest, you live next door to menopause and across the street from the graveyard. How can you possibly be able to make sure that the future my son has envisioned for himself could be achieved when your eggs are damn near hard-boiled?" Things fell apart from there. She began screaming, yelling, and cursing, and so did I. She stormed out of the restaurant. We didn't even order food, just coffee and tea, and we all followed, arguing. My son was beyond upset, yelling at me for being mean to his girlfriend and yelling at her for disrespecting his mother. My husband was yelling at me, too, for not doing as he asked and being civil. I did apologize to my son at the restaurant and later in a phone call for hurting his feelings, but not what I said because it needed to be said. Now that I am a few days removed from it, I could have handled that better. I can accept that I was the a-hole for the things that I said and how I dealt with the situation overall. When I am pissed, I can get vicious. I guess I am asking internet strangers how bad did I fuck up?